Welcome to the Mind of the Meanie, your weekly peek into the world according to former WWE and ECW wrestler, the Blue Meanie. We'll cover wrestling, music, movies, sports, and lots of useless knowledge, all contained in the Mind of the Meanie. I'm Josh Shernoff, and he is the Blue Meanie. Meanie, what's up, man?
Doing good, man. A couple weeks into the apocalypse, and I'm hanging out with Mrs. Meanie at Casa DeMeanie, and we're hanging tough, but we're hanging.
As long as you're hanging. Hey, right off the bat, I want to talk about the feedback we got from episode 1. We're here, episode 2. Thank you so much for joining us. Meanie, what was some of the feedback that you got from fans?
We got a lot of good feedback, man. And from a wide spectrum of people, and it was very cool. A lot of people said, it was a good conversation. Said the conversation flowed nicely, and that's the goal of what we want to do. We want to have a really good conversation and be entertaining, be funny, be informative in some parts. We'll talk about WWE, ECW, all that good stuff. But most importantly, just have a good conversation and be a good companion piece for those who need something to listen to. Whether you're traveling or driving in the car, walking down the street. We want to be that. We want to be that hangout spot where you can sit around, listen to a couple guys talk about everything and anything.
Definitely. And one of the things I saw you shared with everybody on social media was someone who reached out wishing you the best of luck with this was JBL, which I thought was super cool.
Yeah, man. That's the thing is, like, me and John are really cool. We had our issues. It's well documented. It's been talked about to death. But the thing is, a lot of people don't realize is that me and John actually made peace with each other, like right before we had our match on SmackDown. Me and John went into a room and he said, hey, we can either talk about this or we can fight. I was like, well, obviously I don't want to fight with you. We walked into the room. I was like, man, if there's plastic on the floor, I am running. And I don't run. So, we talked it out. We hashed it out. I said, hey, you did this. And he said this and that. And me and JBL are cool, man. It's just the rest of the world that needs to catch up to it and realize that two grown men can have a disagreement and then get together and become friends. And he's been a big help to me. He when not the last Royal Rumble, but the Rumble before that was in Philly, he almost got me into the Royal Rumble as a ECW surprise and stuff like that. And he's done a lot of stuff to help me. So for John to retweet my tweet and say listen to this podcast means a lot to me. So how cool is that? What I'm saying?
Oh yeah. And that's, and not to, minimize, obviously so many people retweeted, which, I know you appreciate and I appreciate, but for him to also take that extra, time to actually write a message to you, I just thought was really cool. And nice to see, because I know maybe we're not launching this episode off with the dirt that everybody wants to hear about how deeply you guys hate each other. And if you ever see them in person, but to me, I think that's just great that, like you said, two adults that were able to just have a disagreement and make up. I do have one question though, that I feel like a lot of people have talked about with it. In that match that you guys had, people still to this day will play that video of Stevie Richards delivering that chair shot to JBL. Yeah. Was that a receipt on your behalf? Was that just, hey, he just hit him with a chair shot and it looked and sounded great? Like, was there any heat on anybody for that?
Well, the Stevie chair shot was brutal on JBL. Yeah. and to be honest, not to go too far behind the curve, but it was a complete accident. Mm-hmm. Well, I shouldn't say not to go behind the curve. I'm here talking about the business, right? So Meanie did a stupid on that one, but the chair shot was like it was a complete accident, and JBL couldn't have been nicer about it and kinder about it. He's like, you know what? It happens. The potato. It was a potato. Potatoes happen.
Yeah.
And
I
he
think
actually.
he's dished out a couple of those in his day.
Well, it happens.
Yeah.
So he actually pulled us aside. It's like, hey man, I know this thing. He didn't mean it was an accent. But he knew we were always on social media, and he was like, "Go on social media and say that was the receipt." And I was like, "All right, okay." I was like, "If you're giving me permission, I'll run with it." So he was like, shit happens, and it made everything look, even. I mean, I'm a big fan of blood in matches, even though it's not the politically right thing to do. The Crimson Mask is. To me, it's like a beautiful thing in wrestling, whether it's on a magazine cover or, if a band does like an album cover with a wrestler, there's like a lot of punk bands that do wrestling album covers and somebody's busted wide open and
Well,
stuff
all
like
the
that.
magazines back in the day, the magazines were like 9 times out of 10 you had Crimson Mask on the cover.
Dude, I went to Catholic school and I got called out by one of the nuns because I brought in the PWI with a bloody Jimmy Snook on the cover. She's like, I never want to see this in the school again. And told me to stop watching wrestling. So I was like, yeah, right, whatever.
And that's why to this day you have mad heat with Bill Apter.
Yeah, Bill Apter got me heat with the nuns, man.
Yeah.
That's why I rebelled. I started wearing half shirts, Daisy Dukes. I dyed my hair blue and stuff like that. It's something I talk to him over a dish of ice cream.
Speaking of the Crimson Mask and your career, you recently over on Instagram at Blue Meanie BWO shared some Flashback Friday pictures from ECW. I believe it was, I'm looking now, May 16th, 1998, after being jumped by the full-blooded Italians. Tracy Smothers, Little Guido, Tommy Rich. And I was a big fan, but I don't know that I ever remembered you being this covered in blood. So if we have any fans who are listening to this and going, what'll make my day, seeing the Blue Meanie busted wide open, go check out his Instagram account at Blue Meanie BWO.
I'm sure there's some fans who enjoy it and some detractors who wish they did it. But, there's a story, like I said, I love blood in wrestling, but, I understand you can't have it that much today. But the story behind me bleeding, in ECW was me and Nova were wrestling Tracy Smothers and Little Guido every night, with Tommy Rich in the corner, of course. And I was like, man, I want to kind of keep this feud going. What could we do? I mean, instead of just having matches, to have it become a little bit more personal. So there was a show in Buffalo, and after the show, I talked to Tommy. I was like, hey, man, what if we go to have a match with, the FBI, and they just jump us from as we're getting into the ring, lay us out with chairs, lay us out with the flagpole, and I'll get a little bit color, and I didn't offer up Nova. If Nova wanted to get a little bit of color, he could too. That was his call. So I was like, I'll get color, and it'll give us a reason to have another match or another series of matches. I was trying to keep the feud alive. You know what? That's very kind of, because my character was a comedy character.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else, the lighthearted part of the show. So Tommy, brought me to Paul, and I gave the same pitch to Paul, and Paul, he's like, well, sir, thank you very much. That's a very good idea. And the next time we were at the arena, they went with it, and I had not really bled in a match or on a show.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if that is this the first time you'd gotten color.
Well, that wasn't the first time I got color. One time as a goof, when I was training with Al. Me and Al were talking about blood and stuff like that, and he told me how it was done and all that stuff. And we had a student there named Rick Matrix, and him and now are talking in the office, and I went and grabbed something. I threw something against the wall. I took like a shitty bump on the floor, and they walked in, and I had blade, and I acted like I slipped and fell and hit my head on the heater. And like Al, Al walks in, and Al looks at me, and he has to turn his head because he knows what the fuck I'm doing. He looked at me and went and like had to turn away, and Rick's like, oh my, and Rick Majors is like, oh my god, you're bleeding. He's coming in checking on me, and Al's like, oh yeah, man, you're bleeding. You okay? And then Rick turned around to run into the office, 911, and we're like, no, it's a rib. No need to call the cops. April Fools or whatever it was. So technically that was the first time I got as a goof. That was the first time I got color. But this time in a professional setting on an actual show, I had never gotten color. So the best person to talk to, Tommy Rich. I went, hey, Tommy was fucking. He was the Da Vinci of getting color back in the day, bleeding.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, I went, Tommy, hey, I'm getting color for you tonight. You help me, with a blade. He was like, all right, Meanie, here's what we do. And like he pulled me aside, he got the blade, and he showed me how it was done. He's like, now you can put it in your tights, you can put it in your mouth, or you can put it on your thumb. And I was like, you know what, I'll just, I think I put it on my wrist. And I was like, oh, okay. And he made me like this fucking Pirates of the Caribbean sword. Like, Jesus Christ. But no, it was good enough. I put it on my thumb, and so we go to do the spot, and they just lay me and Nova out. They're beating us up. They took a chair shot. I go down. They hit me with the flag. So they gave me, they hit me with the chair to give me time to roll over, do the business of, getting the color. So as I'm getting the color, somebody took a bump, and when they took the bump, it hit my elbow, and my elbow took the gig. And I got a little bonus content on the blade job there.
Well, that explains the picture.
When I came up, I was like, "Oh my god!" Like it was weird. Like who's never done that before? It's like everything looks like it looks like you're looking through a kaleidoscope kind of thing.
Jeez.
So we did that, and we go to that, and I'll never forget. Sabu pulled me aside. He goes, "That was too much." I was like, Sabu's telling me I got too much color. Maybe I did go a little bit too far, but I have a relationship with Sabu where I could just talk to him and say, respectfully, say, hey, this is what happened. It was accidental with the bump and the elbow. Mm-hmm. And he was like, oh, okay, but still, that was too much. Because how do you follow that?
Yeah, right. So then Sabu went out and set himself on fire, and that was.
I'll shoot you. So Sabu. That one time, Terry Gordy hard-weighed me. Let me start. First day with the new mouth. Terry Gordy once hard-weighed me with a steel trash can in the back of the head. And we always had a doctor. We always had mics there, and they're looking here and need stitches. Sabu comes over and looks at it and goes, you can use stitches, or I can crazy glue you. I went, well, I mean, how do you turn down an offer for Sabu to crazy glue a wound shut? So I was like, Sabu, you crazy glue that wound, and came over and did the whole deal. I mean, and the crazy glue and wound shuts came from Sabu being a history buff, reading about like World War II. He did it, and it worked like a charm. So getting back to the history of that color job, the crimson mask. Yeah, I had to get like about 6 stitches, and we took a bunch of photos of, and played it up, and that helped, me and Nova have another series of matches with the FBI, because working with Tracy Smothers and Little Guido and Tommy Rich was so much fun, and it's so much of a learning experience.
And you know what? That's actually a great time you had posted something else that I thought we could take this opportunity to kind of share with people. Tracy Smothers Cancer Benefit GoFundMe page that Chris Hero, Cassius Ono in NXT set up, and you shared that. And is there anything that you want to share about that? Well, obviously we'll put that out on social media if we haven't already.
Yeah. I mean, it's no secret that I love and adore Tracy Smothers, not only as a wrestler but as a human being. I first met Tracy Smothers my first year in the business. I was wrestling every Thursday in Indianapolis, Indiana, for a promotion called Circle City Wrestling for Mike Samples. Mike Samples used to work in Memphis and stuff like that, so he would bring in Tracy Smothers, he'd bring in Ricky Morton, and Tracy Smothers, Ricky Morton would watch our matches, and they would pull us aside and give us tips and all that stuff. So when Tracy came to ECW, we hit it off immediately. And throughout my ECW career, Tracy Smothers would take all the young guys into the ring and kind of run like a mini dojo where we would do calisthenics. He would teach us spots, teach us everything. So myself, Nova, and the House of Hardcore students from Danny Doring, Roadkill, Chris Chetty, we all owe a debt of gratitude to Tracy Smothers for being selfless and just teaching us everything he knew. So now Tracy's in a predicament where he's battling cancer, and it would be nice if the wrestling business gave back to the man who gave so much to the wrestling business. I mean, I love Tracy to death, and I want him to, beat this thing and be around with us a lot longer. So if you can go to GoFundMe, we'll post it on the social media. It doesn't matter if it's $1. I mean, look, we're in the middle of this coronavirus thing. I know a lot of people aren't working. Times are tough. If you can't even, anything as small as $1, and if you can't donate, anything from $1, please share the tweet to, for somebody else who might be able to help.
That's a great point.
Anything's appreciated, and we appreciate anything you could do for Tracy, because Tracy's given so much to the wrestling business.
Yeah, and it looks like already, as of this recording, we're about 0.6 of the way to the goal, which is pretty great because I think this was created a day ago as we're recording this now. So that says a lot about him and a lot about his fans. And so we encourage you. We'll put that on social media. But we're talking about this, and it just I had seen your post, and it occurred to me, how could we not bring this up? And like you said, $1 or at least share it.
Yeah. I'm glad you did bring it up. I was going to probably bring it up anyway because I love Tracy so much, but he's Tracy Smothers has left such an impression on everybody who works with him that we do little Tracy-isms, Tracy Smother-isms, where it's either Tracy Smothers dancing or his catchphrases. Like me and Tracy Smothers would be driving down the road, and he'd point to like a field of cows. Meanie, there's your family, man. Why do I hate you? He would have all these little. Tracy would walk in the room and go, "Hey, man, why do I hate you?" He would just have like all these little things he would say to catch you off guard and make you laugh and make you fall in love with him all at the same time. And just Meanie. If ECW ran a 7-day schedule, they need 20 funerals or something like that. It'd just be like something crazy. But he would always have some kind of funny little saying. But a lot of times there'd be a lot of wisdom in those sayings too. But yeah, if anybody could help out Tracy, man, that man needs he's given so much to the wrestling business. It's time to, it would be nice if the wrestling business gave back. So,
absolutely. Hey. Shifting gears from that, but staying on the topic of ECW and lots of blood, Dark Side of the Ring. That was the only thing I had on my sheet for us to talk about last week.
Yeah.
And had such a good time and went so off the rails, which was a lot of fun to do, that we never got there. But now I think it was a good thing that we didn't get there, because as we're recording this, and as you're listening to this, if you listen to it on Monday, remember, Mind of the Meanie drops Monday, 6 a.m., wherever you find your podcast. But we just watched the New Jack episode, and of course, prior to that was the 2-hour premiere, which talked about Chris Benoit and the tragedy with him, and just wanted to talk to you a little bit about it and just get some feedback. And there was a thank you in the New Jack episode to you. First of all, let's get into that. What was that thank you all about?
Like I said, I'm a huge, well, I don't know if I've said it here, but I've said it in life. I'm a huge fan of documentaries. I could watch pretty much a documentary on anything and come away with something. Around the first time of the first Starcast that Conrad was doing out in Chicago, Jason Eisner and Evan Husney from Dark Side of the Ring were making rounds, and they were going to do a special screening of that first Bruiser Brody documentary. And the Bruiser Brody topic had a place in my heart, just because A, I loved Bruiser Brody as a wrestler, and B, I was so angry. I've been angry for so many years that nothing had been done about it, And it got a little bit of play in the media here back in the States, but nobody really pressed the issue. And I mean, how does a pro wrestler get murdered in a locker room and nobody all over it? So when I heard there was finally going to be a proper documentary on the whole Bruiser Brody incident, I was like, I'm there. And Evan and Jason came around to my table. They were walking around and they stopped by my table at Starcast, and I told them, I was like, hey man, good luck with this. I'm all aboard. And apparently, from the Bruiser Brody thing episode, from the topic, grew this whole idea of the Dark Side of the Ring, where they're going to cover other topics. I was like, dude, I'm all in on this. Again, I love documentaries. I love wrestling. This is like a Reese. This is like a Reese cup where the chocolate meets the peanut butter. It's like the perfect thing,
Yep.
So season 1 happens, and I get more familiar with Evan and Jason. They're going to do season 2, and I follow the Dark Side Twitter page. They follow me back, and Evan from Dark Side of the Ring reaches out and asks for assistance in reaching out to New Jack, and then they asked for Sandman's contact info. I reached out to Sandman. I was like, hey, Sandman, are you the guys from Dark Side of the Ring? They do an interview for their documentary. It's like, yo, is that on Vice? I go, yeah, that's on Vice. He goes, I love Vice. That's such a great channel. Yeah, give him my number. So I was like, all right. So I give him Sandman's number, and they reached out on a couple other things, which I don't know if they came to fruition or not. But for the New Jack episode, I got them in touch with New Jack. I got them in touch with Sandman, and and they were kind enough to give me a little shout out at the end of the episode. Also a shout out to my friend Jeremiah Evans, who provided a lot of photos for the show. He's got a really good Instagram, Too Fast for Blood on Instagram. If you want to see some old school ECW photos that you've probably never seen, I'm sure most people haven't seen, but the Dark Side of the Ring guys, Evan and Jason, they fell in love with his Instagram and used a lot of his photos, so he got a shout out in the credits too. So
that's great.
If you're a big ECW fan, check out his Instagram.
Yeah, what was the Instagram again?
Too Fast for Blood.
Too Fast for Blood.
Which it's just a play off of a Motley Crue song, Too Fast for Love. So, but Jeremiah is been a good friend. He's an old school ECW guy. He was always front row every show, and just one of those good dudes, man. Who 6 degrees of Blue Meanie, like he knows. Me and him became friends, and it's just amazing, like how many people he knows that I know, and all this stuff. And we're like, you know him, and all that stuff. But yeah, he's in the credits for the New Jack episode as well.
So what did you think of the episode?
I mean, it's so funny, you know. I listened to this, Tommy Dreamer talk about the episode as well, and I agree. It's just like me and him, the ECW guys can watch the show and go, "Yeah, that's New Jack," you know. And I was following the Twitter reaction to it. It's like sometimes I like I'll watch a match that I love. And then I'll watch it a second time and just watch the crowd. Just watch the crowd reaction. I won't even watch the match. Mm-hmm. But like with the New Jack episode, I watched the episode, and then I went back and looked at the social media feed and just watch people lose their mind over the New Jack episode. It was look, dude. It was a good episode. It was Jack is a good dude. I relate a lot to Jack. Like I said,
is that based off of how many times you've stabbed somebody in a match, or?
I don't have any justifiable housewives.
But all kidding aside, some people might listen and go, okay, how do you? They just watched Dark Side of the Ring, and then here's the lovable Blue Meanie going, yeah, I really relate to him. And some people might be scratching their heads on that. So can you give me like how do you relate to him?
Well, there's New Jack, and then there's Jerome, Mm-hmm. I had first met New Jack at a Smoky Mountain wrestling show. When I was in training with Al. Al was in Smoky Mountain, but for whatever reason, he wasn't doing a show, but Smoky Mountain needed a referee, and Al sent one of his students down to referee a Smoky Mountain show. So I was like, hey, man, I'll come along for the ride. And we went down in the middle Kentucky somewhere in the mountains. And when I get there, we get there early, and Smoky Mountain was old school. You didn't, there was a babyface locker room, there was a heel locker room. And I did what Al had always taught me, go say hello. So I went to the babyface locker room. First time I met Balls Mahoney, I was, he was Brew Bradley. He's Boo Bradley. I introduced myself to, Balls and all the baby faces, and Tracy was there, I think. And then I went over to the heel locker room. I introduced myself. Hello, Brian. And New Jack was there, and introduced myself. And I'm sure he doesn't even remember this. But, I didn't overstay my welcome. I said hello, went and found a spot in the bleachers, watched the rest of the show. Flash forward, I come home from Al Snow School, and I start going to ECW shows. I'm in the business, and then eventually I get into ECW, and I reintroduced myself to New Jack. And he was cool, man. I mean, like, if New Jack's all about respect. You respect him, he respects back, just like anybody would. You or I. You show me respect, I'll respect you back. You don't show me disrespect. Me personally, I'll no-sell somebody. New Jack might just be, he has a different way of, reacting to different disrespect. So,
it's well said.
Here's a good story. Me and Stevie are, doing promos. We're at the Travelodge, the Cylinder of Sin, in beautiful South Philly.
There's a shirt, real quick to interrupt. I believe there's a shirt about that, right? That can be purchased.
I definitely have a Cylinder of Sin T-shirt on ProWrestlingTees.com/Blue Meanie that says, I survived. That's all you need to know. It's like with all this coronavirus stuff and everything, I was like, look, I stayed at the Travelodge. I'm good with this quarantine. So I'm good with the coronavirus. I'm immune, but
you're immune to everything now.
Yes. Yeah. So we're doing promos at the Travelodge. Paulie takes me and Stevie in a room to do this promo. Stevie's sitting on the couch. I'm sitting on the floor. We're just like, it's like a jam session. We're just improvising a bunch of different stuff. There's like a thing of French fries. I feed Stevie a French fry. He's like, "Hey, was that off the floor?" And I'm like, "No, Stevie." In the Blue Meanie character. But also in the room is Paulie. There's the camera guy, Ron and Charlie. The camera guys, Ron and Charlie. There's Alex Marvez from Fox Sports, who also now works for AEW. Alex Marvez,
great guy. He's a great guy.
Amazing human being. And New Jack. New Jack's sitting there watching, right? So like I said, me and Steve were doing a lot of improv, and I don't know what possessed me, but I started like this thing where I could start contorting on the floor, like I was in pain or just goofing off or whatever. And this has got to be funny, right? Everybody's got to be laughing. And my ears are wide open, and I'm not hearing a reaction at all. Stevie's on the couch. I'm rolling around on the floor. So I'm on my back. I kind of half sit up. I look around. Paulie's got his hand on his face. Alex Marvez is biting his fist. And New Jack is giggling like a kid. And I look at all three of them. I go, "What?" Paul goes, "Meanie, balls are out." Because I was wearing I was wearing my Daisy Dukes, and I didn't think to wear trunks because we're just doing promos. I wasn't wrestling, right? So I'm rolling around the floor, and the mini meanies made a cameo. So like from there on, I think Meanie took New Jack took a liking to me because I was just so goofy, I was just so goofy, like, and I didn't get up. In a situation like that, somebody might get embarrassed and might storm out of the room, and they might sell it, and they might react the wrong way. I just reacted. It just rolled off my back like water to a duck off a water's back, a walk off a duck's back. Sorry, but Jack took a liking to me, and here's another story. One time we're in the ECW locker room, and New Jack walks up to me, goes, "Meanie, I got heat with you." I went, "What?" He's like, "Meanie, I'm mad at you." I'm like, "Jack, what did I do?" "Jack, and he's like walking away. I'm like, "No, Jack, what'd I do? What'd I do?" He goes, "Well," and Jack goes on to tell me the story that his daughter came up to him. New Jack's kid comes up to him and goes, Daddy, I want something for show and tell." And Jack goes, "Okay, what do you want? Like a T-shirt? You want a tape of one of my matches?" Of course, like from not the slice and dice stuff, but one of my matches. She goes, "No, I want the Blue Meanie." So New Jack's daughter goes up to New Jack, says, "I want something for show and tell." He offers like his matches. She goes, "I want the Blue Meanie." And that's where that moment I cemented myself that the Blue Meanie was like the Barney the dinosaur of professional wrestling, where in all this carnage you could still have like this kid's character come out and be like, "Hey, I'm the Blue Meanie," and all that good stuff. So and we just both had a laugh about it, and like it was just something like, I became New Jack's daughter's favorite wrestler, and he never forgave me for that. But there's like I said, there's that side of New Jack that's Jerome, and that was like a real moment between me and him, and we shared a laugh, and we got along great. And like I said, I said this before, and I kind of got away from it, where I said I could relate to New Jack because like I said on the last episode, I've always been a part of that group of people that were the outsiders, the misfits. Mm-hmm. Where it was in grade school, where the teacher from another class would come across the hall and ask us to quiet down. My time working the casino, working with those misfits and lunatics, on the graveyard shift, and then I get into pro wrestling, and like the weirdest thing that might have people freaked out or insecure, I'm just like, yeah, oh, whatever. Things really don't bother me that much. So,
Hmm.
like everybody in the locker room was there for a purpose. We were all there because maybe somebody else didn't want us or whatever. But growing up in Atlantic City, there's a lot of kids I went to school with that were New Jack. Just guys that I got along with and hung out. Just chilled out. So like throughout my life, I've always been attracted to certain people because they're characters, and New Jack has not only is a great character, but he's a great guy. And of course, New Jack has done some things in his life, but if I disavowed any of my friends because of some of the things they might have done in their past, I'd have zero friends and maybe zero family members as well. So, I'm still happy that Jack is a friend, somebody I could call a friend, and I was happy to put him in touch with the Dark Side of the Ring guys because he has an interesting story to be told, whether controversial or not. That's New Jack. I mean, you hear all these, and people go, "Oh, he did all this crazy thing," but then you hear like stories, of all these rock bands, and back in the day, Led Zeppelin, having a shark in their hotel room or riding motorcycles down the hall of the Hyatt Regency in Hollywood, and you hear all these, wild stories, rock stars gluing furniture to the roof of their ceiling of their hotel rooms, ECW was pretty much like a rock band without the instruments. New Jack had a guitar, but that was about it. And
that didn't last long once he'd get to the ring.
Yeah, but New Jack's a great dude. He's a great character. Everybody in ECW was a bunch of characters that we left that we had that rock star lifestyle in the ring, back at the hotel, and all that good stuff. So. I could definitely relate to New Jack because it's we're all there for the same cause, the same purpose, and the same life. New Jack was good to me too, man. Plenty of times I would ride with Jack, and I wasn't making that much money at the time, and I hadn't gotten paid yet. He would like buy me something to eat, or we'd be riding around, he'd come pick me up. We'd go just for a ride and just talk about the business. And there was one time in ECW. Jack was out with an injury, and he's walking around on crutches. I forget what his injury was, and we decided me and Nova were going to do a parody of the Gangsters, because we had been doing parodies. Stevie was way at WCW, and me and Nova were still finding our ways on the shows and stuff like that. So Tommy Dreamer was wrestling Danny Doring, and Danny Doring had cornermen like.
He had Roadkill,
Lazansky. He had Jack Victory, and there's another guy I can't think of his name. I want the Equalizer or something like that. And they all start beating up on Tommy Dreamer, and Danny Doring gets on the mic. Not only am I the best wrestler, but I'm also the best dancer. And then from that they hit. My music, me and Nova's music, which was DJ Cool's Let Me Clear My Throat. The music hits. Now listen to this. Jack's on the stage watching the show. New Jack knows we're doing this parody of the Gangsters, which he totally signed off on. I was Blue Jack. Nova was Nova Mustafa, after Mustafa. So we Jack helped us assemble the trash can of the plunder that we're going to bring into the ring.
Right.
So the music hits. Danny hits his line. Our music hits. We run out. Nova's got like a stop sign in his arm. He's got the shield that he's going to unveil during the brawl that's covered up. Pulling the trash can full of weapons to the ring. So me and Nova grab a side of the trash can. I'm aiming for through the ropes. Nova's aiming for over the top rope. And we the trash can, we both hit the top rope, and the weapons just go everywhere but in the ring. And we're like, oh shit. So I just grab a crutch, and I bring a couple weapons in with me. Nova's on the outside. He's, trying to scurry the things in the ring. So I hit Jack Victory with a crutch. We hit all these moves. Dreamer comes back. He, hits somebody with a bowling ball. And, we clear the ring of all the heels, Danny Doring and Lazansky and all that. And we turn around, and New Jack's up where the hard camera is, if you're watching, down the ring. And we, he's up there giving us the X, the gangsters X. We're giving him the X and stuff like that. And we go back in the locker room, and New Jack said, when we went to throw the trash can in the ring, and the weapons just hit the thing hit the top rope, and the weapons went everywhere, Jack literally fell out of his chair laughing. The New Jack fell out of his chair hysterically laughing because he goes, Meanie, only you and Nova could get away with botching that up or fucking that up and still get it, and people just go, oh, that's just Meanie. It's like, if anybody else had done that, you would get the you fucked up chant, right?
Yeah.
But me and Nova, who are like the class clowns, do it. And they're like, they thought it was part of the show. They're like, oh, that was so genius. The fans are like, oh, that's so funny. We're like, and if somebody gives you a compliment, you don't go, oh no, well, we made a mistake. And you go, oh, well, thank you. Yeah, we planned that all along. So New Jack comes down, he gives us his props, and it was like a really cool moment because when the BWO was at its height too, and the BWO was doing stuff on ECW TV. New Jack came and helped the BWO. I think we're doing something with Axel and Devon, and they laid us out with chairs, and the gangsters came and helped out, and New Jack put on the BWO shirt to kind of help put us over. Put on the BWO shirt, he did the X chant and stuff like that. And he didn't have to do that. New Jack was so over on his own. He did that as a way to give me, Nova, and Stevie and the BWO a little bit of a rub. So I've always been, appreciative of everything New Jack. New Jack did things for me professionally and personally. And, he always looked for me. Like one time, okay, here's another story.
Hey, that's what we're here for, man. So,
dude, I got so many new. I know we want to talk about the New Jack Dark Side of the Ring show, but I got so many New Jack stories.
No, hey, look, if people want to check out Dark Side of the Ring, they can go check out Dark Side of the Ring, but they got to go to they got to take this trip into the mind of the meanie to hear all of these. So I don't think anyone's complaining right now.
Well, I hope not.
If they're complaining but still listening, I don't understand that. So I mean, if you hate what you're hearing, just please turn it off. No, don't.
Well, it's like the movie Private Parts when they're going over the ratings. They're like, these, X amount of people listen because they like the show. X amount listen to the show because they hate the show. Why do they keep listening? They want to see what he says next. Yep. So. And like as I'm talking about New Jack, all these thoughts are coming to mind. And there was the Chad Austin incident, which I don't know if you're aware of, but
I'm not sure.
Chad Austin was a wrestler. Well, I don't know if he still is, but Chad was a good dude. But he had a tendency he could, rub people the wrong way. And apparently, Chad had wrestled everywhere. He wrestled at ECW. He would wrestle in Ozark Mountain Wrestling. I don't know if he wrestled Memphis, but one time Chad went down to Smoky Mountain and wrestled, did a couple TVs for Smoky Mountain. And the story that was relayed to me was, Chad went down to Smoky Mountain, and when he introduced himself to everybody in the locker room, Chad Austin, he was telling everybody he was an agent from ECW, like a talent scout or something like that. And he's telling everybody, oh, yeah, I'm a talent scout at ECW. That's the story that was told to me. So the show ends up, and Chad goes up to New Jack. Hey, Jack, do you think you give me a spot here with Cornette? He's like, well, hey, you're an agent with ECW. You should have no problem getting a job, right? So also, apparently he did something and it pissed off New Jack, and he pissed off another guy who, in a million years, you would never want to piss off. This wrestler named Bruiser Bedlam, who was wrestling for Smoky Mountain. Before Bruiser Bedlam was Bruiser Bedlam, he wrestled as Johnny, big, muscular, powerful Canadian wrestler who used to do.
What was his name? What was his name again?
He wrestled as Johnny Canine, like the dog,
Okay.
like like the Canine Squad.
Mm-hmm.
There's the actual number K and then number 9. He was Johnny Canine, and if you meet anybody who's ever met Johnny Canine, everybody's got a Johnny Canine story, and they all have a Johnny Canine impersonation where, hey buddy, hey bro, how about you bench press? Oh, what? I do that for warm-ups, pal, or stuff like that. Johnny had this big chest. He had this big drum from powerlifting. He held a behind the press, behind the head press. It might have been like 500 pounds behind the neck, something ridiculous. He was in all these powerlifting magazines for it. But Johnny was also in a motorcycle club, and there's rumor he may have blown up a police station. There's rumors that Johnny may have murdered somebody. A defense lawyer, maybe, allegedly. I don't know. Johnny's no longer here for us to defend himself, but that's stories written by other people. So Johnny Canine is wrestling in Smoky Mountain as Bruiser Bedlam, and apparently there's a deal between Johnny Canine, aka Bruiser Bedlam, and New Jack, who is going to get to this Chad guy first, who is going to get to Chad Austin first. So flash forward all these, I don't know how much time's elapsed between this incident in Smoky Mountain and the incident in the incident I'm about to describe in ECW, where the night before, me and Stevie were scheduled to wrestle the Gangstas this night at the ECW arena. The night before in Reading, Pennsylvania, Stevie Richard wrestled Rob Van Dam. And there was a miscommunication in the ring between Rob and Stevie on a kick. Rob shot Stevie in, said, duck the kick. Stevie didn't hear it. It was an honest miscommunication. Mm-hmm. Rob Van Dam kicks him full swing right in the face. And it was, it's ugly, it's brutal. It's out there on like RF video or something like that. But it sounded like a Louisville Slugger. So Stevie goes to the hospital, gets looked at. He has a cracked orbital bone, which sounds disgusting. And Mrs. Meanie just dry heaved. So Stevie's fucked up. So Stevie can't go. He can't tag with me against the Gangstas. So they select Chad Austin to be the replacement for Stevie. So in the locker room, and we were having fun because Chad had just buzzed his head. So like, we'll call you lukewarm Chad Austin instead of Stone Cold Steve Austin. We called him lukewarm Chad Austin to be my tag partner. So, I'm sorry.
No, you know what? When I was wrestling a couple years later, I had one of my best friends I was wrestling with. We called him Lukewarm John Brody as a play off of that. And I, to this day, thought that we came up with that. But apparently that was deep in our memory somewhere from this, because I looked this up while you were talking, and it looks like this was April 1st, 1996. So we just passed the anniversary of this. But that's crazy.
And that's why I hired you to do the legwork and the research. What's funny, I'll get right back to the story in a second, but it's funny you said you thought you created something, because in ECW, Taz started coming out to Kiss his War Machine. Mm-hmm. And Taz is like, oh, yeah, brother, coming out to Kiss his War Machine. And Bigelow goes, yeah, I used that in Memphis. And Taz just went, Taz heard Bigelow go, oh, yeah, I used that in Memphis. And Taz just deflated like, oh, like he thought he was the first guy to use War Machine, but it still worked out for him. Nobody else knew, unless you were a Memphis wrestling fan. But back to the story, the lineup sheets, Lukewarm, Chad Austin, Blue Meanie, with Stevie Richards in the corner against the Gangsters. So I'm sitting there putting on my Meanie gear, which is, Meanie gear. I put on my Daisy Dukes. I'm putting on my half shirt. I'm putting on my boots. I get blown up putting on my boots. I start painting my face. New Jack comes over. New Jack puts his hand on my shoulder and leans in. I go, shit, what's this? Kidding around, He goes, Meanie, me and Mustafa are working you in this old Chad Austin. Stay with Mustafa. I went, double thumbs up. All right. He's like, don't come near me. If you come near me, I'm going to hurt you. I don't want to hurt you. Don't tell me twice. So, thanks for the heads up, man. Thanks for the stock tip, New Jack. And it was me and Mustafa took over me and Mustafa stayed in the ring. And it was the tale of two matches because me and Mustafa are in the ring having this match, and around us on the outside of the ring is this homicide happening where New Jack, I guess whatever happened in Smoky Mountain on top of when Chad, they said we were going to have this match that night in ECW Arena. Chad Austin went up to New Jack, much like Mass Transit went up to New Jack and said, hey, let's do this, and that, and the other thing, which wrong move, like if I was going to wrestle New Jack, I'd be like, hey, Jack, what are you thinking about doing? And then, and Jack would say, and if Jack went, I don't know, what do you want to do? Then I would say, right. Okay,
and it kind of goes. Well, it kind of goes back to what you were saying before about how the difference between how you would no-sell somebody and Jack might have a different way of handling things, because that's kind of standard in the wrestling business. If you're going in, you have a match with somebody, and and obviously you've been around the business much longer and more successfully than I have, but if you go in and there's somebody who's a veteran over you, or even a veteran in the locker room compared to you, at sometimes, if you're in a new locker room, it's respectful to just kind of let them kind of take the lead and like you said, kind of sit out, let them ask you for your opinion. And again, so right off the bat, I think this guy would have offended anybody and maybe would have gotten a couple of choice shots in the match. But New Jack, like you said before, this is a different cat. This is a different guy.
And New Jack's New Jack, and so somebody else might have just chewed the guy out in the locker room or cut a promo in the locker room. And you know what? Speaking of this Chad Austin incident, and which I'll get back to in a second, and speaking of the mass transit thing, I had a similar incident. Speaking of Johnny K9 / Bruiser Bedlam, I was booked on a show in Canada for Scott D'Amore, who works for Impact TNA. And Scott was running shows in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, and I went up to work for Scott, and I worked Johnny K9, a.k.a. Bruiser Bedlam. And I made the rookie mistake of saying, hey, Johnny, is it okay if I do this, that, and the other thing? And he kind of like looked at me. I was like, shit. And we went in the ring, and he lit me up. I mean, nothing brutal, but like, Slams had a little extra oomph. He tossed me out of the ring, and we're in Windsor, Ontario, at a Greek community center. And if you can imagine cafeteria chairs, like high school cafeteria chairs, where they're plastic and they kind of curve.
But they don't fold. Yeah,
they don't fold, but they just curve. It's like one continuous piece. He hit me with one of those chairs so hard that the plastic shattered and the shrapnel just gigged the back of my head. So, like, he tosses me back in, the match ends. He goes through the back through the curtain. I'm still sewn in the ring like I just, got shot by a rifle. So I go back to the curtain, and he's there waiting. I'm like, oh, man. He comes up, he goes, hey, buddy, hey, bro, sorry about that, man. And he started apologizing. He kind of felt bad that he laid into me, and I was disrespectful. I should have asked him what he wanted to do first. And he felt so bad. He started apologizing. So we're in the locker room. He's like, "You all right, buddy? You all right, bro?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, John." So the next time I see Johnny Canine was at a show for Midwest Territorial Wrestling, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, come here. Come with me." And he went and had the promoter put me on the show.
Oh, wow.
So he felt so bad about it. He put me on the show. But, I'm talking about other people fucking up. And I just want to give an example of where I did the exact same mistake. I made the exact same mistake.
Oh, sure. And so many people have, who have gone on to have very successful careers, but yeah, I guess New Jack's just, as we learned from Darkside and from your stories, is just not the guy to make those mistakes with.
And it just goes back to, we all come from somewhere. We're all raised a certain way. And he had stuff he grew up with, and I had stuff. I had issues I grew up with too. Growing up, I never knew my dad and all that stuff, and shit that just hung with me and kind of had a little chip on my shoulder too. But getting back to the Chad Austin thing, me and Mustafa. Yeah, me and Mustafa talked about a couple things in the back, and we kind of did like Three Stooges spots. And meanwhile, on the outside, New Jack is just tearing up. Chad Austin, he's throwing him into the crowd. He's throwing back over the rail. He's hitting him with a chair. And, I forget what it was, but I think Mustafa shot me in the ropes, gave me the Hogan big boot. I bumped. I sold out. And I think this might have been the night that New Jack invented the drive-by finisher he does, where he'll put a guy in the middle of the ring. Yeah, he'll lay a guy out in the middle of the ring, and he'll come off the top rope with a chair to the face. And I think this is the night he invented it on Chad Austin, because it reminded me of the cartoon Tom and Jerry, where the cat would hit the mouse with like a dustpan, and you would see the imprint of the mouse's face on the dustpan. So Jack comes off the top and does that. 1, 2, 3. And then like Jack hops outside to hit Chad with, and he looks at me and Stevie, and he takes a step towards me and Stevie, and me and Stevie go, "Ah!" And we run to the locker room and totally abandon Chad Austin to where New Jack goes back in the ring, and he starts hitting Chad with the chair. And it's to the point where Mustafa stepped and went, "Hey." It's to Mustafa kind of started dragging Chad and try to get Chad out of the ring and stuff like that.
Oh,
but it's just like one of those things where, Jack, he looked out for me. Jack respected me. Jack looked out for me, not only in the ring. And I mean, maybe I'm using the wrong example, but he definitely took care of me in the ring. He respected me in the ring. He respected me. New Jack respected me as a human being, and he looked out for me. If I didn't have enough money, he'd buy me something to eat. He wronged me, he would speak up. If somebody disrespected me, he would speak up. Not like another wrestler, like if a fan said something, he would speak up. And be like, "Hey, Meanie," and Jack's a cool dude. There's New Jack and there's Jerome, and I've been very fortunate to get to talk to Jerome, and somebody I'll always call a friend.
Yeah, and again, Dark Side of the Ring, just so well done, as is every episode they do. They do a tremendous job of putting these documentaries together. But really, it is an interesting look into New Jack and some of the more high-profile things that he did.
If I could get back, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
To get back on track with the new, the Dark Side of the Ring episode with the mass transit thing. There's a few things that came to mind while I was watching it that I kind of wish I had reached out and pointed out to them, but a lot of times when ECW ran the shows in Massachusetts at like the Wonderland Dog Track and stuff like that, or anytime we were in Massachusetts, Killer Kowalski, the great legendary Killer Kowalski, would come to those shows because Killer Kowalski trained the Eliminators. So he'd come by, the Eliminators invited, Kowalski to come by. Kowalski would talk to the younger guys. And Kowalski still had his wrestling school. So he would bring, his students to an ECW show, and some of them would get in the ring and roll around with some of the ECW guys. And, a very cool communal type atmosphere. Like even one show, the first time I ever met Chyna was at an ECW show. She came to the Wonderland show and hung out and watched training and stuff like that. And it was, when she showed up on WWE TV, I was like, oh my God, that's the Killer Kowalski student. I knew her right away. It was kind of cool. But, like I said, Killer Kowalski would always come to Massachusetts show. So the night in question, Mass Transit comes to the show, and he's got the two the midget wrestlers.
Were you there that night?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good for our listeners.
I was there, and the things in perspective, there's always like, anytime you go to a ECW show, or in wrestling in general, any wrestler will relate to this. If you go to a building you're familiar with, you sit in the same spot, you get the same traditions, you still, you do the same things over and over again. And, when we wrestled at the Wonderland Dog Track, like, people from the building would, like, hook us up with, like, a pitcher, pitchers of water, Dixie cups to drink out of, not Dixie cup, but, like, Solo cups to drink out of. Somebody wanted soda, they would give us soda and all this stuff. So I go over, and I go to get like a soda, because I stopped drinking soda then and now, but back then I was like a soda fiend. So I'm drinking some soda, and the student comes over and he starts drinking our soda. I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And it was Mass Transit. But when I saw Mass Transit in this outfit, I thought he was the security guard for the building. Because blue. He had the blue shirt, the powder blue shirt, the black pants, the same outfit I wore in Catholic school. So I was like, who's this guy? Why is he drinking our water? I mean, that stuff's for the wrestlers. What's he doing? I had no idea who he was. And then, like, later on, I see him sit down. He sits down in his chair, and he lights up a cigarette, and he's sitting, like, right next to Taz. Like, Taz is like, hey, brother, you want to put that out? Or I don't know. Taz got hot. He goes over.
That's surprising.
So we're getting around this kid was a wrestler. Yeah. The kid had no etiquette, and of course we learned that he had lied about his training. He said he was the reason why I brought up Killer Kowalski is this kid had said he was 21, which kills me because I wish I had known that point, because I would have pointed out that one show that Killer Kowalski did not come to, a guy showed up saying he was trained by Killer Kowalski and got on the show. Had, Killer Kowalski been there, and Paul could have went to Kowalski and said, hey, this is one of your students, Kowalski could have, shut that down right then and there. And we might not even be talking about this situation all these years later. And it turns out Axel, they needed a spot on the show. Axel couldn't make it to the show. So, okay, we'll put, And another thing they kind of missed on the show, but it's not pertinent to the story, that he said he wanted to wrestle as Ralph Cramden. He's supposed to be a bus driver. He wanted to be Ralph Cramden from the Honeymooners. So New Jack was like, "Nah, I am not going to call you Ralph Cramden. You're Mass Transit. All right, you're Mass Transit." So that's how the whole Mass Transit name came up. And
Are you saying New Jack created the name?
no,
Mass Transit?
no, Paul Heyman created it because the kid, Paulie's like, "Okay, what's your name? So I can put you on the lineup sheet."
Right. Okay.
He goes, "Oh, I wrestle as Ralph Cramden." He goes, "Nah, I'm not calling you Ralph Cramden. I'm calling you Mass Transit." So in the workout, everybody's seeing this kid, goof around. We're like, "Man, what's he doing?" And then like he goes up to New Jack, and he had arrived with the two, the minis, and then Paul wasn't going to use them, but and then Mass Transit goes up to New Jack, and just like with Chad Austin, and just like me with Johnny Canine, "Hey, let's do this, that, and the other thing." And New Jack was like looking around like somebody was ribbing him. Like New Jack was looking around like, "Okay, who put this kid up to come up to me and talk to me like this?" And when everybody made a point to go to the lineup sheet and see when this match was going to happen, because as we say in the wrestling business, the curtain was sold out.
Right.
And there's a way where, like, if you ever see a tape from the Wonderland racetrack, there's the curtain, and there's like a little spot between the curtain and the top of the ceiling or whatever. So there was a set of stairs where you can go up the set of stairs and kind of look over the curtain and watch the matches. And I went and watched that match in person. I was not in person, like as it was happening, and it was just insanity. It was just craziness. And the match happens, and people are rushing back to the locker room. Who's got towels? We legit had there was a couple that was called Damage Control. They were a gimmick, but they were legit paramedics. They're running back, going, "Who's got towels?" People are getting towels. They're running back. They use on the kid's head, and I don't know if they brought them back through the locker room. They brought them back somewhere, but the dad charged in the locker room, and trying to look for him, and Atlas Security was like, "Nuh-uh, you gotta get out of here," stuff like that. And they got New Jack out of the building. And then what's crazy about that trip is I was traveling. I was going to travel back to Philadelphia from Boston with Gabe Sapolsky, who runs. It was Gabe who did ECW Fan Cam. Gabe, who went on to be the creative mind of Ring of Honor. Now he does Evolve.
Yeah.
And he works with WWE, and he's a consultant for all that stuff, for helping get talent in NXT and all that stuff. He was working Fan Cam that night, so I was traveling back to Philadelphia with Gabe, and Gabe was kind enough to let me stay over his house, and we're talking about this. He's talking about how brutal it was. And mind you, I had only watched the match with my eyes. So I was like, let me watch it. So he busted out the camera. And before, the tape even hit, I'm sitting in Gabe Sapolsky's, parents' house watching this match through, the viewfinder. And, hindsight's 2020. If I had a DeLorean, I'd go back and go, maybe you should erase that tape.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe I should be the hero. Go back and erase that tape, and just only because the implications that came from that pay-per-view. I mean, that pretty much shut down ECW's first pay-per-view for a minute.
Right, it delayed it for sure.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
This kid lying about his age, lying about his training, and going into the ring, and then he went into the ring and asked, before the match, he asked New Jack to cut him, which, if you're a trained professional wrestler, it's been practice in the business if you're not familiar with cutting yourself. But I was also taught, by Al, never let anybody else cut you, because only you know your threshold of pain. You know your comfort level.
Right.
When I gigged myself, with Tracy Smothers and the FBI, I knew, I mean, sure, I had a little help there with somebody taking a bump in the ring, but never let somebody else cut you. And he asked New Jack to cut you. He asked New Jack to cut him, which if you're going to ask somebody to cut you, that's, like I said, he's the Da Vinci of blade jobs. And so it happened, and it was unfortunate. And everything that happened almost shut down a company and cost so many people jobs because somebody wanted to lie and play, professional wrestler. Which it's crazy that something like that can happen in the world of professional wrestling. Because I couldn't, buy a bunch of like football gear and go down to Lincoln Financial Field and go, "Hey guys, I'm ready to play for the Eagles."
Yeah.
How's that?
It's amazing.
I'm sorry,
No, I not to cut you off. I was just saying, I agree with you. It's amazing how I really think if you look at all professional sports, and I'm sure some people will argue, oh, well, it's entertainment, not a sport. Okay, let's pretend that it's entertainment, not a sport. Try walking onto a set and saying, hey, I want a speaking part in this television show that you're filming. It seems like pro wrestling is the only major place like that where you can just walk on, and it can even happen in the WWE. It can happen in AEW with people, they're always bringing extras in, and they try to vet them as best they can, but I'm sure somebody can sneak their way in there claiming to have trained either more than they have, or claiming that they trained with someone that they didn't. So it's amazing that that's something that can happen.
That happened with WWE, where a guy showed up at a show in Tampa and said he was a professional wrestler. He was semi-trained, and he maybe worked a couple local shows, but he really wasn't trained. Mm-hmm. And a guy named Chuck Austin, amazingly enough, another guy with the last name Austin, lied about his experience. Went in the ring with the Rockers, and
oh god, yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah,
and they asked him if he wanted to take the rocker dropper. He said he could take it. They walked through it, and when Marty Jannetty went to give him the rocker dropper, the guy took the exact way you're not supposed to, and shot himself into the canvas like a lawn dart. And went head first instead of just pancaking out, take a flat face bump. A full body bump. Mm-hmm. So, instances like that happen where now, WWE, the business was like that in the 90s, maybe early 2000s, but it's really, they've really locked down on, how people get into on their shows and stuff like that. But, this happened in the, 90s, and it almost, crippled ECW before we even had a chance to get on pay-per-view,
Yep. Hey, I want to take a quick break to talk about our sponsor, and then we're going to get back to some more Dark Side of the Ring. I want to talk about the Chris Benoit episode, but we absolutely have to thank our sponsor for today's episode, the Rhino Wrestling Review. The Rhino Wrestling Review is hosted by Dan Rhino of ProWrestling.com, which is the greatest name you can possibly get, the greatest URL you can get, ProWrestling.com. The Rhino Wrestling Review is a mixed format show. It's once a week. It's a podcast which includes breaking news, hosts' opinions, and interviews from the world of professional wrestling. And the goal of this show is to deliver a pro wrestling podcast from a fan's perspective. Not a guy pretending to know everything, just saying, hey, I'm a fan. Here's what I think. It's relaxed and it's entertaining. Dan is joined by a revolving cast of co-hosts offering unique opinions and takes on the ins and outs of this crazy world of professional wrestling. They even let some guy named Josh Shernoff appear on their show before. The Rhino Wrestling Review drops every week on ProWrestling.com, as well as your favorite podcast platform. That's Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and so many more. You can find them on Twitter at Rhino_wrestling and at Dan Rhino. That is RYNO. And on Facebook, Rhino Wrestling Review. Again, it's RYNO. Meanie, we got to thank Dan Rhino for sponsoring. He has a great podcast. Like I mentioned before, it's the Fan's Perspective, but it's really interesting. He's a smart guy. He knows what he's talking about.
A huge thanks to Dan Rhino for sponsoring the show this week. And I mean, any help we can get, we appreciate. With I really appreciate somebody coming out and wanting to sponsor the Mine and the Meanie. And from everything you've said, he's got a great website. He's got the perfect name for a website, prowrestling.com.
Yeah, it just blew me away that was available. Right? Like,
how is prowrestling.com available in this world where everybody's snatching up URLs to hoard to themselves, And he's got a great last name too, Dan Rhino. I mean, that's a pretty badass name too. So it's always good to have different opinions, different perspectives in wrestling and watching wrestling. We all have our opinions and perspective, and he's got a pretty good deal over there at wrestling.com.
Yeah, so again, that's the Rhino, RYNO Wrestling Review. We'll tweet out a link. We'll post it all over our social media. But again, Dan Rhino, thank you so much for sponsoring Mind of the Meanie this week and a few weeks to come. We're looking forward to having him on here. Very, very supportive of our show and just a true fan of professional wrestling. Somebody that I think if you listen to a show, you really will enjoy and probably agree with a lot of his perspective on things. So thank you again. Rhino Wrestling Review. Back to Dark Side of the Ring, Meanie. I honestly, I feel like we could go another 2 hours talking about some of the New Jack related stuff.
Right.
But I did want to get your opinion. I don't want to spend too much time just kind of, because this is obviously far less jovial to discuss. I love how it's, New Jack stabs someone and we can all laugh. But this is a much more serious one. The Chris Benoit episodes. It was a 2-part episode. What did you think of the episode, just as a documentary right off the bat, before we even talk about the content and the story? What did you think of the episode?
I think Jason and the guys from Dark Side, Jason and Evan hit the ball out of the park with the Chris Benoit 2-part episode. Just there's one thing to know a story, and then there's another thing to do a deep dive into a story and learn things you never knew. That happened with the Chris Benoit. Nancy Benoit situation, and I think a lot of that stems from people having conspiracy theories on what happened. And I think when it comes to the Chris Benoit and Nancy Benoit story, I think there's a lot of poisoning the well with what information came out. And then people started, making conspiracies saying, "Oh, Kevin Sullivan had somebody come and murder them," and all this wild and crazy stuff that came out in the wake of this tragedy. That I think Evan and Jason did a spectacular job on a horrific situation to not only tell the story, but without getting into detail, kind of it up with a little bit of a bow at the end. I'm sorry, you were going to say something?
Oh no, I was just agreeing with you. But I will add that something I thought they did a great job was your concern when you're doing a broadcast that obviously your intention is for people to watch, for getting ratings and whatnot. The concern is always, are we sensationalizing this, right? Is that where we're all just going to, grab our popcorn and let's sit back and watch a show talk about this horrible, horrible tragedy? I felt that this is just my opinion on it. I felt that Dark Side of the Ring handled it respectfully, tastefully. And I will say there was one part where I was actually kind of nervous of what I was going to see when they started showing some images of the scene, of the crime scene, right, of their home. And I honestly I'm like, at that point, I'm watching this and I'm just thinking to myself, oh God, please don't show me something that is not going to be able to get out of my head, you know? And again, I felt that they tasteful as you can in a situation like that. But I thought they really showed you enough that was so impactful. These visuals were so impactful without showing you something that was, I felt disrespectful to the victims, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and Jason and Evan do a spectacular job with. They paint a picture for you where they won't show you the graphic details of what happened in the Benoit and Nancy situation, but through reactions, they kind of paint that picture where they have the people they're talking to the cops, and as the police officers who arrive on the scene are talking about what happens, they have actors reenacting, and we're doing a walkthrough of everything that had happened. And like you said, they definitely didn't sensationalize it. They didn't go for the cheap thrill, and that's another reason why I love this series. They lay everything out, and they give you every side of the story pretty much, and with those who are willing to participate in the documentary. And let me tell you, like when it comes to the story is. When this whole Chris Benoit and Nancy and Daniel, I mean, let's not forget Daniel. He was a victim in this as well.
Of course.
When this all happened, there's no way this happened. I was shopping when the word started to come out. I was shopping with Mrs. Meanie, and we were in a store, and I got a text message from my friend CJ, wrestler CJ O'Doyle, who now wrestles in Florida. He said, "Dude, Benoit's dead." What? And he's like, "Yeah, apparently him and his whole family are dead." And I'm like, "Oh, I went and found Mrs. Meanie, and this is like the internet was the internet, but it's not the internet that we had out there. Where like, I mean, you get people on the street with their camera phones recording stuff. You got all
right.
And everything was not out at that point. So where I'm like, if you told me a space alien came down from Mars and murdered Chris Benoit and his family, I would have believed that well more than Chris Benoit had murdered his family and murdered himself.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to, like I said with the story with New Jack, because I know New Jack professionally and personally. I knew Chris and I knew Nancy a lot better, but like I'm not going to sit here and like, oh, we broke bread every Sunday. I knew Chris from working. The first time I met Chris was at Al Snow's gym. He wrestled Al on a Dennis Corluzzo show, and that's between that and WWE. That's the most I knew of Chris, in person. I knew Nancy from ECW because when I debuted for ECW, she was. Oh, I had met her as a fan. I was a huge fan of hers, as a fan for Chris. But I had more personal connection with Nancy through ECW. My first night in, I was debuting as the Blue Meanie, and I was going to paint my face up, and I forgot my mirror. I go, crap. And I said to Raven, man, I forgot my mirror. And he calls Nancy over, hey, can you help Meanie his face? And the night I debuted as the Blue Meanie, my face, a little trivia, Nancy was Nancy Sullivan at the time, painted my face, helped me paint my face, for the next couple shows until she, left for WCW. And what gets lost in all this thing is, Nancy was such a sweetheart. She was not only, a tough woman, but she was a sweetheart, sweet woman. She had a great mind for the business, and she was one of the boys, really. She had been around the business long enough that she knew more about the business than some of the guys in the business.
And it really is something. I remember. Now, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I remember watching the first night when this happened and they canceled Raw and they made it a multi-hour tribute show to Chris Benoit, and they showed some matches from WCW. They showed some matches from WWE, and At the bottom of the screen, they had an image that would come up of Chris and Nancy and Daniel. And that was almost the extent of mentioning Nancy. And I remember that night, before knowing anything about how this happened or who was responsible, but I remember just from being a lifelong wrestling fan, I remember just thinking to myself, why aren't they talking about woman? Right. You know, which was there for those who might not know, that was Nancy's, that was her name, her gimmick name there. And I found that so interesting that there was no, and I understand she didn't work for them, but she was the wife of the guy that they were honoring, if nothing else. I mean, I found it very confusing that they didn't take that opportunity to honor her that night as well. And I guess one of the things I wanted to ask you is your opinion. You know, everybody talks about, should Chris Benoit be in the Hall of Fame? And I think we all have our opinions on it, and we can definitely get to your opinion on that. But I just still feel like Nancy, one of the biggest tragedies purely through the lens of professional wrestling, because obviously tragedies are so much larger than that, but purely through the lens of professional wrestling, I would say a larger tragedy than Chris Benoit's career being blacked out would be the fact that Nancy has not gotten the recognition for being, until the Dark Side of the Ring. I don't feel like she's gotten the recognition publicly for her contributions to the business and how good she was at what she did.
Nancy was beyond good. In ECW, she, sometimes she would call spots for the guys doing the ring or come up with ideas for them to do in the ring. And like you said, the night of the tragedy when they canceled Raw and Vince gave a speech and they were showing video packages and they would show they would show the photo of Chris, Nancy, and Daniel like in the lower third or whatever. It was almost like, they were talking about like Nancy she was like a civilian, like she had never been a part of the business. In a lot of ways, not only was she a victim in the tragedy that happened, it was almost like re-victimizing her by not recognizing her for all her contributions into the wrestling business in front of the camera and behind the scenes and stuff like that. And when this whole thing happened, when I first got word, like I said before, I was like, there's no way this happened, and like myself, like a lot of people were like speculating, maybe it was carbon monoxide poisoning, maybe they went to sleep, and carbon monoxide poisoning, they didn't wake up, and all this stuff. And when I was working with WWE, when I went back for my short stint in 2005. Chris was on the road with us, and Chris was coming around with his son David. So when I had heard that, Chris, Nancy, and his son died, I wasn't aware there was like another son named Daniel. So I'm thinking it hit me it hit me hard to, not knowing at the time. It hit me hard that, Chris was dead. It hit me hard that, Nancy was dead. And then, the son was dead, thinking it was the son. It hit me hard, that both sons. Of course. Son, it still hit me hard that, his son passed away. But I was thinking, I was thinking it was David that passed away, not knowing that David was, in Canada. But it just hit me. And then slowly but surely, the details that, Chris had done it. And I think everybody was just in a state of disbelief, not excusing it, but just having, people who knew Chris and interacted with Chris. And like I said, my experience with him was short, but he was just a professional. He was kind. When I went to have my match with JBL on SmackDown, it was a super show. Chris came up to me before my match with JBL and kind of gave me a little pep talk, because I had been walking around that day all day looking nervous, looking unsure. Triple H came up to me, hey, all right. So Chris Benoit comes up to me, hey, man, you could do this, gave me, put out his hand, gave me a high five and all this stuff. And, who am I for, Chris, this great wrestler, Chris Benoit, to come up and give a pep talk to. So that being said, when I found out, Chris had murdered his family, it was just, I stayed in disbelief to the point where I'm just waiting for another shoe to drop to say, oh, we've, when a tragedy happens, a lot of misinformation comes out,
Sure.
Where I'm waiting for somebody to say, oh, sorry, we got this wrong. Somebody else did this,
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, here comes the news, and here comes the magazines, here comes CNN, here comes every major newspaper and publication to talk about this. After a while, it just became numbing. So and the thing about this, the Dark Side of the Ring episode, I can appreciate it's 13 years after the fact, 12 or 13 years after the fact, to where you kind of look at the tragedy with fresh eyes, and I think they did a good job telling the story, and I appreciate the fact that they let Chavo have a word, they let Nancy's sister have a word, and they let David have a word in this whole thing. I had reconnected after so many years. I had reconnected with David Benoit at the next Starcast that Conrad ran in Vegas. And
Right.
as soon as David walked in the room, I recognized him immediately. And,
first of all, how can you not? He looks just like his father.
He's a carbon copy of Chris. So I mean, and if I can share like a funny story, like Chris would bring David around to the SmackDown TVs, and like he would always go around and just like mess with like Nova, who was Simon Dean at the time, and rib him and all that stuff. And you see David Benoit hanging out with Eddie's kid, and they're it's like the meeting of it's like a family vacation where the two families are there. Eddie and his wife and kids were there, and Chris was there with David, and see the families together and stuff like that. So and that's another thing with the Dark Side of the Ring. They also go into the other mitigating factor that Eddie had passed away, and Eddie and Chris were thieves. I mean, they were so tight, and they were so tight knit as friends that the one calming factor in Chris Benoit's life, Eddie Guerrero, had passed away. And another thing I'm glad they talked on was Johnny Grunge.
Yeah, I am glad that there wasn't much acknowledgement, but I am glad that there was some acknowledgement of that. But they didn't touch on, and I'm sorry, I'm probably just stepping on your toes here, but
no worries.
But Johnny Grunge passing away.
No worries, because I mean, when Eddie passed away, that hit Chris hit him so hard, as they illustrate in Dark Side of the Ring. But in the meantime, Johnny Grunge, who Chris and Nancy both knew from ECW, they both knew him from WCW. He was like another calming factor if Chris and Nancy were having a disagreement, call Johnny would come over and be like, "Hey man," Johnny was always that calming guy. He was so laid back. I would never really see Johnny Grunge get like angry or blow up, and he'd be like, "Oh man, why are these guys arguing?" Stuff like that, to the point where somebody go, "Yeah, why are we arguing?" He was always like the calming factor. And then Johnny Grunge passes away, and that was the passing of Eddie hit Chris, but also the passing of Johnny Grunge really did affect Chris, and that might have been the last calming factor. The person who would pull Chris in from, like, if Chris was having a bad day or a little bit grumpy. Johnny Grunge, Eddie and Johnny Grunge were both there, like, "Hey man, what's the big deal?" Think of it this way, and they would take Chris, they would reel Chris back in. So I'm glad Dark Side of the Ring acknowledged, even if it wasn't as big a way as they could have, Yeah, I mean, Johnny was definitely a big factor in the relationship with Chris and Nancy, but I'm glad they acknowledged that he was there, to help, be the mediator between Nancy and Chris.
And then you also have to factor in, what they talked about, which obviously was something that we've all known for a while, but they really went into a good amount of detail with it, is Chris Benoit's brain damage. And, anybody who's ever had the misfortune of knowing somebody who family member or friend with dementia or Alzheimer's, or, you with something like that, you will watch a person disappear. You'll watch them change. You'll hear them say things that in no scenario prior to the issues with their brain beginning would that person have ever said these words. Would that person have ever thought to say these words? And so, and I am not in any way trying to say, hey, here's the excuse about what Chris Benoit did, but it's something that I've always looked at that, and in a way, if I'll frame it this way to cover all bases, to not, because I really don't want, I mean, this is a topic I don't want to offend anybody with, but in a way, if all of this is true and that this was brought on primarily because of the severe CTE, one of the people that you do have to kind of feel for is, we'll call him, the original Chris Benoit, the Chris Benoit before these head injuries, the Chris Benoit who all of his friends say they could never in a million years imagine him doing something like this. You have to kind of feel for, theoretically, I guess you have to kind of feel for that person who became this monster through these head injuries. And I'll say again, if that is what led to this and whatnot, but that's something that I've always kind of looked at and said, like, how horrible it is for this guy who was in a way a victim himself that then led him to do these horrendous things.
And to that point, the brain damage and the CTE is no way, shape, or form a get out of jail card.
Of course, absolutely.
Right. He did what he did. It was horrible. It was a monster thing of a thing to do. But it also brings into perspective of, we need to take care of ourselves. Wrestlers themselves need to watch what to do and be a little bit more precautious, which right. WWE is starting to do now. And like you said, you think about the Chris Benoit we knew, anytime somebody, when you get into a professional sport like football, they take a baseline reading, they test you right. out. And if they think you're concussed, they, measure you at that current moment versus your baseline test. So that being said, everything we knew about Chris Benoit before this tragedy was the baseline test. And then once, everything happened and all the, the thing that annoyed me the most about it, everybody's like, oh, roid rage. Right?
Yeah, no, that was just ridiculous.
That's the cheap, that's lazy journalism. Yep. Oh, it had to be steroids. It had to be this. It had to be that. And underneath it all, did he do steroids? Sure. Have I seen? Could he have had a roid rage at some point in his life? Absolutely. But I've been around people who've had roid rage, and nowhere does somebody go on a 3-day murder spree over roid rage.
Right. I mean, the key word there is rage.
Yeah.
There's no prolonged rage over 3 days of that. This.
A roid rage is somebody, getting cut off in traffic, getting out and, kicking their car or punching a wall, or it's like right. a short burst of like, "Mah!" And yep. then you're like, all right, why did I do that? Well, let me go spackle the wall I just punched through, But whatever was going on with Chris with the brain damage, it was a slow dive into madness, and the only thing I could maybe equate it to, like the movie Full Metal Jacket with Private Pyle. maybe it's a good excuse, maybe it's not good excuse, or maybe it's a good theory, maybe it's not a good theory or a comparison, whatever word I'm trying to find right now.
Analogy.
But analogy.
There
Thank
we
you.
are.
That's
what I'm here for.
That's what I hired you for. To pull words out of my mouth. But if you watch the movie Full Metal Jacket, where there's that one instance where Private Pile gets jumped and they beat the shit out of him with the bars of soap, and then he goes into this slow path of madness to where he snaps and he kills the one guard and he kills himself. All this prolonged punishment to the head and the brain, and doing the headbutts off the top rope and chair shots, unprotected chair shots, which in hindsight isn't isn't a good look.
No, and
I mean, back in the 90s, people are like, well, you got this hard, your skull's this hard surface, your brain should be safe, not knowing that your brain's bouncing around in its shell like a BB.
I mean, what do you?
That thing moves.
Yeah. Well, what do you say to? Because hardcore deathmatch style wrestling, different things like that. It's still, you have promotions like GCW, very much in that hardcore mentality. I don't know if I'm, what the 2020 vernacular is for it, but and forgetting the light bulbs and the barbed wire and all that, and whatever someone's preference is to that. That's a company. By no means are they alone in taking chair shots to the head. In 2020, I feel like there are some independent promotions out there that are kind of wearing it like a badge of honor, like, oh, the WWE might not be doing this anymore, but look at us. We're still real wrestling. We're tough, and we'll take chair shots to the head. Where do you stand on that?
I would highly, and look, I like GCW. I like the guys who run.
Yeah, I'm not burying them at all.
Oh, no,
I'm not trying to. Yeah.
I'm just prefacing my statement with that. Just, I like everybody who runs it. I like the guys who work there. But I would highly advise against like the chair shots and stuff like that, to the head at least. I mean, if you're going to take a chair shot, maybe feed your back. I mean, wrestling in general is not good for your health. If you did a study of like one bump in the ring, taking a bump in the ring is like a small fender bender. Like if somebody, pulls up too close and taps your bumper, that's what a bump does to you. Now imagine doing that countless times. Now that's being said, maybe take a chair shot to the back, leave the head alone. If you want to slice and dice, I'm not going to say don't do it. That's your prerogative. If that's your formal art, I'm not going to sit here and get all preacher. I'm not going to preach to you. Look, hey, I've been there. I've been there, done that, been around it. It would be hypocritical of me to say don't do it. But if I could just say, please protect your head at all costs. Now, there's nothing macho about taking an unprotected chair shot, and there's nothing macho about putting a hand up to at least try to block it. If anything, it makes it look more realistic that you're trying to, shun the blow. So, if I'm an up and coming wrestler, please protect your head. Learn from my generation. Learn from this Chris Benoit situation. Look at the NFL. Look at all the high rate of suicides in the NFL, where guys are, they're killing themselves, but they're protecting their head so they can donate their brains to, Chris Nowitzki and his program.
Yeah.
So, and that's why the NFL's under a lot of fire too. I mean, they're all different, but they're all the same. It's all contact. It's all protecting your head. Protect your head at all costs.
And one other thing that I want to say, because I've been just talking about this and thinking about what I said earlier about Chris Benoit prior to it. Look, there are plenty of times, unfortunately, that we've seen things in the news where you see somebody who has never had a head injury, who's done something horrific like this, and you have neighbors and families and friends saying, oh, I never in a million years could have thought it was him. So I want to put out there that I don't want to discount the fact that this man, aside from head injuries, could have done this. I mean, that is very much there. It's hard to, I had never in my life met him, so I'm not going to presume to have known him, or I'm only going by the things that I've heard, like every other wrestling fan out there. But I just wanted to make that clear that I wasn't, because there are people who were very seriously affected by this who could be listening to this podcast. And I just want to make that clear that, we don't know what happened, and it's a tragedy. And the nice thing about Dark Side of the Ring was for us as fans, and even for the people, like you said, we won't get into it because you should check it out. But there was, the little bow at the end there, the cathartic nature of this for some people who were involved. And, it was a tragedy that, unfortunately, we're never really going to have a true answer to. But Meanie, I did want to ask you, we talked about David, his son, who was not the victim there, was a victim in some other ways because of this. And David has expressed interest in very recently about being involved, being a professional wrestler. He had an interview where he talked about wanting to have tights just like his dad and have that same kind of look and everything. Where do you think, I mean, obviously he should not be held responsible in absolutely any way, shape, or form for something that his father did. Where do you land on this with him wanting to pursue a career in wrestling? What should he do? How should he do this? Is it just something where you just say, hey, just don't this, where do you land on this?
It's a good point to point out that, David Benoit has also been victimized in this, just by having to live with this, and if he wants to get into pro wrestling, I think he absolutely should pursue it, and it's to the point where, like, Bubba Ray Dudley has offered to on his show Busted Open, offered to train David Benoit free of charge. Hey, you want to train? Come to my wrestling school. I'll train you, which is awesome. I think enough time has passed. It's 13 years. I can understand where the WWE might be on it, but I think it would be perfect for a situation like AEW if they want to give him the opportunity to pursue his dream. The sins of the father shouldn't be passed along to the son. You know what I'm saying? If he loves wrestling, if it's his passion, if he really wants to do it, I think he should pursue it. Should he keep his name? That's not for me to say.
And does it matter? But does it matter? Because I'm thinking about a guy like Joe Hennig, right? Who's Curtis Axel.
Right.
And a lot of people have looked at it and said, why did originally it's Michael McGillicuddy was his name? I guess there's a connection to Beulah somewhere in there. But,
no.
Right.
Well, to be honest, I think it was a throwback to his mom. I think that was his mom's maiden name or something.
I think that's what they had said. I didn't know if that was actually true or not. But in
the world of wrestling, who knows?
Right. And so a lot of people, myself included, when that first happened, were like, this is Joe Hennig. Like, what are you doing? Like, this is Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect's son, Larry the Axe Hennig. Like, there's a lineage. Why are you doing that? And still to this day, I kind of wonder, like, why, like, Curtis Axel, other than just them liking to have the rights to the name and character. And I get that. But my point on that is that everybody knows who Curtis Axel is. Everybody knew who Michael McGillicuddy was prior to them acknowledging the connection to his dad. So David Benoit, to go by any other name, to go take his mom's maiden name, right? To go by any other name, you know who he is. So why not just use the name? I mean, it's his name. It's not, he's not the only person. Chris Benoit is not the only person in the history of the world to have the last name Benoit. In professional wrestling, he kind of is, but it's an interesting thing because we all know so much. Like, he can debut under any name and we know who he is, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's a shame because he's never gotten a fair shake. It's tough. I mean, you see him walk into a room, and if you don't know him personally, but you recognize him, what's the first thing you're going to think of? You're going to think of this tragedy, and what a horrible thing. Like, he shouldn't have to deal with that,
I think we're and to a point we could think about this and we can analyze it and maybe sometimes over analyze it.
Sure.
But I think in some way, shape, or form, if he was to go and train and become a wrestler, and if they thought he was experienced enough to go on TV, and I think if he stepped in front of the crowd, I would think I could see a crowd accepting him.
Yes.
I especially knowing that this was no fault of his, and to know that he's a victim in all this. I honestly, God, the honest truth, could tell you, I bet if he walked out in front of an AEW crowd, they would give him a standing ovation. Not because of who his father was, and because his father was a great wrestler, but he's a kid who went through hell. And he's a kid who's been victimized and punished for something he had no hand in. And This is just a kid pursuing his dream and love of being a professional wrestler. I could totally see that happening. But now is the time where he needs to decide, am I going to be a professional wrestler and go through with the training that, Bubba has offered to him. And hopefully we get to that point where we could see this, come to pass.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add about? Oh, I'm sorry. Keep going.
No. Just the same way I want to see Nancy get her due. Nancy belongs in the WWE Hall of Fame. She deserves to be in
100%.
Every professional wrestling hall. She deserves to be in every professional wrestling Hall of Fame. And I understand they don't want to dig up this tragedy, but I guarantee if, in the next years or so, if they just ran a footage where they show the Hall of Fame marquee and stuff like that, and it's put the word across the screen, just have it say Nancy. Not Nancy Benoit.
Or woman.
Yeah. Not Nancy Benoit, not Nancy Sullivan, just Nancy. And to your point, just put woman. And run her wrestling footage from WCW, from ECW, from Florida, and have her sister put her in, and let Nancy get her day in the sun, get her spotlight, get the dude she's deserved, because she deserves to have her name celebrated for the things she's done.
I agree 100%. Anything else on Dark Side of the Ring you want to talk about?
Dark Side of the Ring has been doing a bang-up job. I mean, these first two subjects been amazing. I believe the next one might be Tough Enough.
Brawl for All.
Brawl for All.
Yeah.
My bad. Tough Enough. Though I'm sure they could do something with Tough Enough.
I'm sure.
I swear to God. I wish they did Tough Enough when I was at Al School in Lima, but that'd be more for HBO than MTV. But the upcoming subjects, they bookended it with two subjects that are interesting between Benoit, and then they're ending the series with the tragedy of Owen Hart, which when that airs, I want to dive into that because I was there for that and had a experience with that and a personal experience with that as well.
Yeah,
but
we will save that for when the time comes. And Owen Hart was one of my favorites of all time. I actually got to meet him shortly before this happened, and I have just a fun memory of that, of meeting him. And but I would want to hear about that, but I'd also want to hear so many other stories about him and anything that you'd be able to share. And we will, and that's something I think we'll absolutely dedicate a full episode to him because he's deserving of that. One that I'm interested in is the story of Dino Bravo, because that's something that just does not get talked about. And I remember reading about it in one of the magazines back in, I want to say it was like 93 or something, somewhere around that. I remember reading in the magazines and I was just like shocked by it. And then over the years, you'd hear like, kind of hear a little more about what happened. And like, it went from like, oh yeah, he was found dead to, oh yeah, he was shot to, then you hear it's like, oh yeah, he was shot 7 times in the head and 8 times in the body or whatever it was. And so I'm very curious about the story behind that. But any other one that you're most looking forward to?
And again, with the Dino Bravo story, just like the Benoit story, the well of information's kind of been poisoned by conspiracy theory and everything else. So I'm definitely interested in Dino Bravo. I'm definitely interested in the Owen Hart one, and I'm interested in the whole series as a whole. Hopefully to do a series, a third series, because there's still more wrestling to be talked about. A shout out to Evan and Jason. They've done a phenomenal job on the show, and it might sound crazy, but I hope they get some kind of recognition, for documentary series, because it's been the highest rated show. It's the highest rated show on Vice, and I mean, I know the subject of pro wrestling in Hollywood is taboo and frowned. We're above, circus clowns or whatever, or step below. But I would love to see them recognized in some way for the work they're doing on this series.
Yeah, no, they're doing a great job. I want to quickly shift gears to plug our merch, if you're up for that, because I don't know how exactly to, like, there was no real good segue into, hey, let's talk about a tragedy and hey, you want to buy a shirt? But no, one thing that I do want to say is. We really do appreciate, again, how much the support and the feedback that we've gotten with this podcast. This is only episode 2. I'm just having a blast I feel like I've got a front row to hear these stories because I get to hear them before anybody else does. And it's just so cool to be able to hear your opinions and perspective on these. If you are a fan of Mind of the Meanie and you'd like to show the world how much you love Mind of the Meanie, well, you can go to mindofthemeanie.com and that will directly link you to our Pro Wrestling Tees page, prowrestlingtees.com/Mind of the Meanie. But we made it even easier. Mindofthemeanie.com sends you right there. We've got some great new shirts on there. I guess every single shirt on there is new. We've got the Mind of the Meanie logo tee. We have, based off of something Meanie said last week, we have the Don't Fact Check Me, which I really like. And we've got another one coming up soon where if you agree with the Blue Meanie, then you're going to get to tell the world how much you hate mustaches. So keep an eye out. I don't know if that'll be up there by the time this airs, but that should be up there soon. Hey, how about Meanie Mania?
Meanie Meanie is running wild, baby. Hopefully running wild on the podcast world. Again, thanks to everybody who's listening. We looked at the numbers for the first podcast, and we're totally blown away. And if I may point out, Mind of the Meanie definitely outdrew WrestleMania this year. So
something we're very proud of. Yeah, but we're not going to give you exact numbers, but I can confirm that. Yeah, we absolutely did outdraw WrestleMania. Hey, but so some people might be confused and think that if you go to prowrestlingtees.com/Mind of the Meanie, that you're going to be getting that's all the Blue Meanie shirts. No, that's shirts dedicated to funny things that we've come up with together, myself and Meanie, phrases that were said on the show, things promoting the show Mind of the Meanie. But if you're looking for some BWO merchandise, if you're looking for some strictly Blue Meanie merchandise, well, then you have to go to prowrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie, because you will find we talked about the cylinder of what was it? Cylinder of Sin?
Oh, the Travelodge shirt. We got the shirt dedicated to the Travelodge saying "I survived." The Cylinder of Sin. We also have BWO shirts. We have the Hal Haney Blue Meanie half face shirt, where it's half BWO, half Job Squad. Mrs. Meanie designed some shirts on there. We have a shirt specifically dedicated to unbooked catering. So there's plenty of times I've gone to Raw and not been on the show and sat and had some unbooked catering. Mrs. Meanie also did a Hello Kitty inspired Blue Meanie shirt called Hello Meanie. So if you want to get some shirts that Mrs. Meanie designed, as well as some shirts I've designed, and you can't go wrong with a BWO shirt as well. So
and there are a couple of different options. We got the barbed wire one on there.
Yeah.
There's some.
Back in the day when NWO was, the NWO, Hogan came out and had an NWO shirt with a barbed wire border. And I was like, that'd be perfect one day to do for a BWO shirt. And thanks to the folks at Pro Wrestling Tees, they allow me to design my own shirts and put up a barbed wire BWO shirt in blue or white.
Yeah, it was really, really fun stuff. If you are from the Philadelphia area, there's some real fun shirts in there as well, just about Philadelphia. So again, prowrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie for all of Meanie's merch. For Mind of the Meanie, you can just go to mindofthemeanie.com. For any of you who are just like, hey, I've got all this money lying around and I need to buy shirts that I don't care about, you can go to so-says-Shernoff.com and you can buy some of my merchandise. I've got a Sarcasm is My Superpower, seems to be our top seller there, and lots of other shirts about my show, So Says Shernoff on Fight TV. But I'd be remiss if we did not mention Collar and Elbow. That is the wrestling brand. And of course, if you see Meanie not wearing a BWO shirt, chances are it's a Collar and Elbow shirt. But now it can be both a Collar and Elbow and a BWO shirt. Go to collarandelbowbrand.com, use the coupon code Meanie and save 10%. Meanie, tell us a little bit about Collar and Elbow.
Collar and Elbow is the shirt company of my big brother Al Snow, and him and his folks over there, him and Rod over at Collar and Elbow do a fantastic job. And I've always been a fan of their Collar and Elbow mirror shirt, where it's collar on the top and elbow underneath, like a mirror's reflection. So I was like, man, I would love to see like a blue and white BWO style Collar and Elbow shirt, and they did a bang up job with the design. And it just went live this week, so head over, get yourself a Collar and Elbow BWO shirt. They have a shirt dedicated to Pampero Firpo, the legendary wrestler from Detroit. Yeah. They got so many cool shirts. My besides the BWO, my other personal favorite is their shirt dedicated to Mid-South Wrestling with the old Mid-South Wrestling logo. So I'm a big fan of the parodies. So if you want to get a really cool parody shirt from Mid-South, it's called the Dirty South shirt. So go to collarandelbowbrand.com and get yourself a shirt and get yourself a discount by using the promo code Meanie. So save yourself for cash.
Yeah, but again, we thank you and for helping us out to spread this show, and I think some of the merchandise, our idea behind it is, hey, here's a fun way for you to share it, and you'll get a cool shirt out of this. So that's all of those Pro Wrestling Tees, Collar and Elbow, So Says Shernoff for anybody who wants my stuff. So I think at this point it might be a good time for us to do a little AMA, a little Ask Meanie Anything. You up for that?
Absolutely. Let's see what the fans have in mind.
All right. This is from Dominic D'Angelo. He asks, didn't get this in on time for last week. Craziest story you have at McCuster's. # hold my calls. And I'm going to actually piggyback on that because somebody had asked a question. Jeffrey Mitchell had asked a question. Dear Meanie, can you tell us the origin story of Hold My Calls on the podcast? And he actually tweeted out a nice picture of the Meanie at McCuster's 17th and Shunk, South Philly Hold My Calls t-shirt, which is available at prowrestlingtees.com/Blue Meanie. Yeah, there we go. There's our question. Any fun stories from there? And where did the Hold My Calls come from?
Well, I'll go with the second question first. The origin of the Hold My Calls catchphrase. Hello, Jeffrey Mitchell. I know Jeff. me and Mrs. Meanie were taking a trip up to Connecticut, where she's from. And we had one morning we went out for breakfast, then we went to a local diner, and it just happened to be, well, actually, it's the anniversary coming up. It was April Fool's Day. So,
Just
back
passed.
in the day, there was an app I used to use all the time called Foursquare, where you would just check in where you were. So we go to this diner, and I check in, and me and Mrs. Meanie are having breakfast, and out of nowhere, a waitress comes over, and it's just like a scene out of the movies where they bring you a phone on a tray, but this is like a cordless phone on a tray, and the woman goes, "Excuse me, are you Blue Meanie, Brian Blue Meanie, rather?" And I go, "Yeah," and I'm a little hesitant because I know it's April Fool's Day. I'm like, "What is up?" I pick up the phone. I go, hello? And on the other line, there's a little kid. He goes, hi, Blue Meanie. I'm like, yeah. I just want you to know, I really like to watch you wrestle. I'm a really big fan. I go, oh, well, thanks, buddy. I'm having breakfast right now. But thanks for being a fan. And all right, thank you, Blue Meanie. I handed the phone back. And like the whole time I was waiting for somebody to, somebody, like Al Snow or Roadkill or somebody to call up and rip me. Hey, clown, or say something to me on the phone. So from that point out, I learned the trick is to, when you're going to sign into someplace on social media, sign in when you're leaving. Now, that would be not really ideal to do when you're checking in McCuskers, because I'm usually there till they say, Meanie, you got to go. And so every time I check into McCuskers, I take a photo of whatever I'm drinking at the time. I should do the hashtag, but I just go hold my calls, which is a reference to, hey man, I just checked in at my favorite spot. Don't bother calling. I'm not picking up. So that's where the origins of hold my calls came from. And the other question, any crazy stories of McCuskers? I usually go to McCuskers on a night where I know mellow. McCuskers is a great bar in South Philly at 17th and Shunk, family run, family owned. It's John McCusker and his two sons, Ryan and Dougie. And I know when I go in there, there's going to be no drama. There's not going to be anything crazy. But if I was going to say anything crazy that happened to McCuskers, would be the times I've been there for, the Phillies World Series run, and the night, when the Eagles were going on a run to go to the Super Bowl. Because if anybody knows South Philly, they know that like when something really good happens in sports, like winning a championship and stuff like that, everybody just goes to Broad Street. Mm-hmm. So, McCusker's like 7 blocks from Broad Street, so we know that, we'll celebrate McCuskers and head down to Broad Street. And then after we've done celebrating Broad Street, we go back to McCuskers. So anytime it's been like a crazy scene in McCuskers, has always been around a sporting event, or we'll go there for like, say, the Oscars, and we'll get drunk and do like a Mystery Science Theater 3000 type deal when we're watching. We do a running commentary of what's going on the screen. So McCuskers is really just a real chill place to go and hang out. Not really crazy, but always a lot of fun.
But definitely not a place to call the Blue Meanie if you just want to chat on the phone.
No.
Yeah. We'll take one more here. This is from @TheJamminJeff. He says, #AskMeanie. Always been a big fan of you and Stevie and the parodies you guys used to do. What was your favorite parody you guys did?
That's like trying to pick my favorite child if I was a parent. Favorite parody. The ultimate has got to be the BWO, because it's over 20 years and we're still talking about it, and all that good stuff. Besides the BWO, if I had to take BWO out of the equation, I'd probably have to say Kiss. The night that myself, Stevie Richards, Supernova, and Donnie Allen debuted as Kiss at DCW. Well, we did Kiss at the ECW Arena, but we debuted it the night before at Lulu Temple in Plymouth Meeting, which was kind of funny because we're going to paint up as Kiss. I was like, you know what? I'll just go out, get some clown paint. We'll paint ourselves up. Me having no experience whatsoever with clown paint, and the fact that it was super hot in the building, we're trying to paint our faces, but we're sweating, and the black and white paint was like bleeding together and became this gray, this glob or whatever of paint on our face, grease paint. So we cleaned our faces off, we painted our faces, and we went and hid in. They had a walk-in freezer there at Lulu Temple, I guess for whenever they had events and stuff like that, and they needed to to have a big walk-in freezer. We stood in the walk-in freezer until somebody went and got us. Said, "Okay, your music's playing." Came and got us. Our music's playing. We'd go to the ring and do it. So the next night, I guess whoever went to the Plymouth Meeting show had an inkling that we're going to do it the next night. And the next night, I definitely smartened up, and Nova came up with the great idea that we do, instead of using clown paint, we paint our face. We normally paint our faces with acrylic paint, just like the Road Warriors, just like Sting, the Ultimate Warrior. It's always acrylic paint. So I got a tube of white acrylic, painted our faces up, and that worked way better the second night. And the cool thing about doing Kiss is, Gene Simmons always spit the blood. He spit fire, and there's no way I'm spitting fire. And I didn't want to really spit the blood that like he spit it because I didn't want to get it all over the ring. So I'm a huge fan of the Great Muta. So I took this as an opportunity to pay homage to not only Gene Simmons but Great Muta, and I did like the red food coloring. I did the Muta mist up towards the ceiling of the ECW arena, and that's probably one of my favorite moments because not only that, like a moment like that became talked about in Chris Jericho's book. It got talked about. Shane Douglas still talks about because he's a huge Kiss fan. Probably keeps talking about because he's a huge Kiss fan and stuff like that. So the Kiss fans who are in the locker room in the wrestling business often. Oh, and even what's his name? Dale Torborg, who was the demon, the demon in WCW.
Yeah.
He hit me up and he was like, "Well, I'm doing the demon thing about, I'm no Blue Meanie in ECW, but so I got a lot of fun mileage out of the Gene Simmons Blue Meanie character when we did Kiss." And a footnote to that. And just like Kiss, we replaced the drummer when we did the Kiss parody in New York, and we got Pablo Marquez, a.k.a. Ubas. Johnny Allen couldn't make the show, so we painted up Ubas as Peter Criss, and he had no idea what we were painting. He's like, "Baby, who's Peter Criss? Who's Peter Criss? Why are you painting me up, baby? What am I going to do? Just go out there and act like you're playing the drums." So just like Kiss, we replaced drummers and we painted up like Peter Criss, just like Kiss did. So
that's awesome. And now everybody knows the story behind the famous phrase "out of the freezer and into the ring." So
pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
No, that's great. That was definitely a good one. You had so many. I know last week we talked about BlueDust, but so many parodies. So that's just kind of cool to hear which ones are your favorite. But I mean, obviously I think the BWO has got that. You know what though? The BWO, that became so much more than a parody, I mean, that became its own entity. So, but no, hey, so thank you guys for what's up?
To the point where, people still wear the BWO shirt on pay-per-views. You'll still see the BWO shirt at Raw. And to have a point of reference, there were so many NWO copycat gimmicks. Like they came in the wave of the NWO, and like we did the parody out of respect and all that stuff. And we were the first ones to do it. And when I, eventually ran into the guys from the NWO, they were more than gracious about us being the BWO and stuff. Hey, man, Scott Hall told me, since I was Scott Hall in the BWO, I was the blue guy. He would go to Kevin Nash and be like, well, hey, since he's the blue guy and he leads the BWO, I should be the leader of the NWO. Blah, blah, blah. So, so many cool things came out of the BWO. So many cool things came out of the Kiss thing, and I'm forever humbled and grateful by it.
And so many cool things came out of this episode too. This was a lot of fun for me to get to hear your stories. This is kind of what we talked about last week, how we never really know exactly where the episode's going to bring us. We knew we wanted to talk about Dark Side of the Ring, but man, so many great stories that I was just so happy to be able to hear. And I hope all of you enjoyed it as well. That about does it for us here. Meanie, do you have any final thoughts for our fans who we still have not named, although we have had some suggestions? Real quick, if I can read those out. There was Evelina suggested Meanieites, as in like Mennonites, I guess. And Jeffrey Mitchell, who we mentioned, he had the Minions, like Meanie's Minions. Or BWO, which I felt like I think that's just his way of trying to get himself into the BWO.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna have to keep
chicaner.
Yeah. So we'll have to keep thinking about it. And if you have any idea of what you'd like us to call you, send that in.
Yeah, we definitely want to be interactive with the fans. I know we talked a lot about Dark Side of the Ring, which I was more than happy to do. Share some personal experiences with the subjects of New Jack and Benoit, and Nancy and Daniel and David. I'm if you're still here, I thank you. I know when I tell a story or an experience from my life, I'm sure I could go take the scenic route, as I like to say. But eventually I get to the point, and hopefully you enjoy my way of telling a story and sharing my experiences. And I'm grateful. Yeah, this is all still new. We're still finding our footing. I got some very good feedback from a lot of friends who are in the industry, and they said some good things, and they also gave some valuable advice. So we're going to take it under advisement, and it's just been a great experience to come on here, and in a time like this where everybody's a little bit scared with everything that's going on in the world, all the craziness. Like I said, we're currently living in a Ken Burns documentary that hasn't been produced yet.
I saw when you tweeted that out, that cracked me up, and then I stopped for a second. I was like, oh, it's not even necessarily that funny. It's kind of terrifying, but yes, it's very true.
Yeah, it's just like, I'm so used to seeing those Ken Burns documentaries, and that somebody has the long lovelorn letter, "Dear Eileen." In years from now, hopefully when we all come through on the other end of this craziness, and look back and see. I mean, there's going to be stories and documentaries and everything written about this era.
Oh, sure.
And if we could do anything with this podcast, is hopefully take your mind off things for a little bit. We know there's plenty of podcasts out there to listen to, and we appreciate that you chose us. And just by the numbers alone and us outdrawing WrestleMania, I thank you for listening. So I say that tongue in cheek. But no, seriously, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you at episode 3.
Yeah, and make sure to follow us on social media at Mind of the Meanie. And while you're at it, follow us as individuals as well. Meanie can be found on Twitter and Instagram at Blue Meanie BWO. I'm at Sosa Shernoff on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget to visit mindofthemeanie.com for all our great new shirts, and of course, Pro Wrestling Tees / Blue Meanie and collarandelbowbrand.com, promo code Meanie. For the Blue Meanie, I am Josh Shernoff. Join us again next Monday for another trip into the mind of the Meanie.